Warning, this video contains depictions of bloody violence and gore. Rest assured that what you are seeing is not actual blood and guts. It is red-dyed liquid, latex rubber, and plaster. Everything will be okay.
Sure, we've seen horror movie murderers hack through victims with power tools before, but have we seen it where the murderer carts around a power generator on a little red wagon that's then used to power said power tools to hack through said victims? I think not. Well, that is until 1991's Blood-Sucking Pharaohs in Pittsburgh hit the small screen on VHS tape. Shot entirely on location in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the summer of 1988, Blood-Sucking Pharaohs in Pittsburgh is a horror comedy murder mystery about a mysterious serial killer who's donned in a long black coat, sunglasses, and a black fez hat, and is hacking up prostitutes and collecting particular body parts from each victim, while two dim-witted police detectives are bungling the case. A case surrounded in Egyptian iconography and themes. No, do not confuse this with another horror comedy of its time that also involved prostitutes, chainsaws, detective work, and blood sacrifices for an ancient Egyptian ritual, Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers. You see, that one takes place in Hollywood. It's completely different, come on. Nor don't confuse it with yet another horror comedy of its time that also involves the murders of women, detective work, killers taking body parts for an ancient Egyptian ritual, and also happens to take place in Hollywood, Blood Diner. And that one they're trying to put together a feast of sorts. Much like in Herschel Gordon Lewis's Blood Feast from 1963, where a killer is going around killing women in order to obtain particular body parts to complete an ancient Egyptian ritual, while a detective is trying to track down the killer.
Well, Frank, this looks like one of those long, hard ones.
Wow, who would have thought that so many movies would have this particular similar idea? But we're gonna take a guiltless pleasure gander at my favorite of the bunch, the Johnny-come-lately Blood-Sucking Pharaohs in Pittsburgh. Meet Sergeant Joe Blocker, an alcoholic manic depressant who lives a lonely, ramshackle life. His health-conscientious, health-food-eating partner, Sweeney Birdwell, gets on his case about finding a wife to get his life in order. However, we come to learn that Sweeney's married home life isn't exactly in order itself. His wife, Erna, is a mega chain-smoking addict despite constantly exercising and eating healthy.
Here's your breakfast, papaya and pinto beans. Real healthy.
This movie may hold the record for the amount of cigarette butts ever present in a scene. Ugh. Erna has smoked so much that she needs an electrolarynx to speak.
I wish you could spend more time at home. We need to have more quality time together.
That is, as long as she keeps putting fresh batteries in it.
I can't understand you. You gotta keep fresh batteries in that thing.
Erna is perpetually self-conscious about her slovenly appearance. She's always seen wearing a lived-in bathrobe. She didn't even take it off for a wedding, apparently. She fears that Sweeney will leave her for another woman. So much so that her jealousy causes her to believe that Sweeney finds even the murder victims to be prettier than her.
I bet she was pretty, wasn't she?
Someone sawed off the top of her head and ripped out her brains. Does that sound pretty to you? Pretty messy's more like it.
But Sweeney never indicates that he has a problem with Erna's looks. He only dislikes her extreme smoking habit and wants her to be healthy.
Why don't you just stop?
No! Don't say it! Don't say it!
Joe Blocker, on the other hand, while working as a detective in Las Vegas 12 years prior, he had a nervous breakdown, developed a sexual problem, and went through a divorce. In fact, his nervous breakdown and sexual problem seems to be well known by everyone, and it's a constant running gag throughout the movie.
Because of your sexual problem? He told me all about it.
Sexual problem. Because of that sex problem. Try to be a shut up!
So now he's seen as a woman hater.
I don't hate women.
Yes, you do, Joe.
And on top of all of that, he's also seen as a joke by the rest of the police force because he's easily queasy by the sight of blood, and, well, he throws up a lot.
3 times this week.
Sweeney is constantly losing money to the other cops because he loses bets on whether or not Joe will puke at the crime scene. Well, now you can see why Joe sits around in his rat-infested apartment and constantly puts a gun in his mouth. That's right, to drink alcohol out of it. Come on, lighten up over there. What'd you think this is, Lethal Weapon? Joe's not all too dumb of a cop because he's able to piece together that the string of murders happening currently in Pittsburgh match the MO of a serial killer, Semmet Cairo, that he and his partner in Vegas, Deke Taylor, were able to track down, where Taylor apparently shot all of the blood out of Semmet's body as he was fleeing. Ah, it's so much blood, look at it! Joe was so sickened by the sight of this, and while he was chasing the killer, he slips on a severed ear and slides through a massive puddle of blood. This occurrence manifests into his fear of the sight of blood, which then leads to the aforementioned nervous breakdown, and
sexual problem.
So Joe has the idea to bring in his ex-partner Deke Taylor to Pittsburgh to assist on the case, since it resembles their case so much so from Vegas. Although, due to unforeseen circumstance, in place of Deke Taylor arrives Dee Dee Taylor, Deke's daughter.
It's me, Dee Dee Taylor!
How did you get in here?
Who also happens to be a bona fide law enforcement officer, or more precisely, a regulated parking controller, or as Sweeney and Joe see it,
Meter maid. She's a meter maid. Meter maid?
But Joe and Sweeney's discouragement don't sway the optimistic, persevering, hiccuping Dee Dee, because she's on a personal mission to find her father, who has gone missing for the past 18 months. She believes that the recent series of killings in Pittsburgh are connected to his disappearance. So the three of them embark on finding the mysterious serial killer, much to the chagrin of Joe and Sweeney's police chief, a raving mad lunatic buzzsaw of a man.
Just what the Sam fucking hill is going on here?
Perhaps you recognize the chief, played by local Pittsburgh actor Don Brockett, as reoccurring character Chef Brockett on the long-time running national famous children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Something to eat.
That's right.
Would it be?
That's right. This
pie,
was my
too.
day for baking pies.
Hey, that's great.
Yeah, and I brought some.
Brockett has also turned up as small parts in movies filmed in and around Pittsburgh. As far as his role in this movie, he nails it. His performance is absolutely hilarious with his character's mean-spirited, loose cannon behavior.
I hate my wife. I hate my children.
Yes, the humor in this movie is truly absurd. Delightfully absurd. Perhaps we should take a moment now to talk about the comedy of this movie, because I'm sure by now you're thinking, what the heck is up with this movie? While it is billed as a horror comedy, I would barely consider this a horror movie by nature of it not actually being dreadful or instilling fear. Yes, it has the slasher elements, the bloody violence, and the shadowy killer lurking about, but this flick's objective first and foremost is to make you laugh.
Mister, you got a quarter? Hey, if you don't have a quarter, that's okay too, man.
Now, whether or not it achieves that goal comes down to an individual's personal comedic taste.
I was just kidding around.
Yes, the movie has its own fair share of lowbrow, crude humor, but it's accompanied with the type of goofball, slapstick, surreal humor you would expect from a Jim Abrahams and Zucker Brothers film, such as Naked Gun, Airplane, Hot Shots, Top Secret, Kentucky Fried Movie, you name it. In fact, I described this movie to friends as Naked Gun meets Blood Feast.
There he is.
Easy.
There he is. Go for it, Stephanie.
For example, at the beginning of the movie when the cops are investigating the crime scene of the film's first murder, this scene really sets the tone for the type of comedy you're about to get. Music blares as our protagonists rip into the chaotic scene of first responders trying to get hold of the carnage that just occurred. As Sweeney is trying to study a note left in the dead victim's mutilated head, he suddenly says, a cop car with a cartoonishly large speaker on its roof turns off the music that was actually playing within the movie. Why would this even exist in the realms of the movie's world? Who knows, and who cares really? It's stupid and silly, and that's why it's funny. Heck, I haven't even scratched the surface of the truly absurd stuff yet, especially the subplot that involves Erna going to a specialized clinic to help her quit smoking. Let's just say this place goes to some unorthodox extreme measures to help their clients kick their addiction. One last thing I'll cover about the surreal nature of this movie is that there's a point in the film where our protagonists are tracking down their prime suspect. And where do they go? Why, the Egyptian part of town, of course.
The Egyptian part of town.
The depiction of Egypt Town is what you would expect, just a hodgepodge of exaggerated cultural stereotypes. There's camels, belly dancers, snake charmers, stop signs with hieroglyphics, you get the idea. Perhaps not the most ethnically sensitive approach, and it's a rather broad gag, but the idea that the mid-sized Rust Belt blue-collar steel town city of Pittsburgh would have a thriving and lively Egyptian district is funny. The Egyptian part of town was filmed in the city's Strip District, on Penn Avenue between 19th and 21st to be exact, which is a popular market district formed by an international melting pot of restaurants and shops owned and operated by people from, and descendants of, Europe, Asia, the Middle East, Africa, Central and South America, Mexico, the Caribbean, you name it. So you know what, I feel that Pittsburgh would gladly have an Egyptian part of town. Heck, I'd go there and try the camel burger. If it looks like that, then maybe I'll just get the couscous.
Me too.
Two couscous!
Now back to my original point of this flick being more so of a comedy and less of a horror film. And while it is one big satirical goof of the slasher horror genre, it never comes across as if it is ridiculing the genre. I feel it is joyfully winking at the horror audience and inviting us to laugh along. Never does it come across as, look how stupid these types of movies are. Instead, it feels like, look how much fun we can have with these types of movies in a stupid way. Screenplay writer Dean Shedder was tasked by the producers of Bloodsucking Pharaohs to flesh out a one-page synopsis written by story creator Tom Tully. Tully, by the way, plays Deke Taylor in the movie, yet his character never speaks a single word. However, Shedder didn't know anything about the horror genre at the time. His career was mainly rooted in art direction and set design for stage theater and soap operas. So he did what any good researcher would do, and he went out and rented a bunch of classic horror films like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Evil Dead 1 and 2, Halloween, and he even bravely dipped his feet into Herschel Gordon Lewis's body of work, who by the way was born in Pittsburgh.
Aren't you excited? Yes, Mother. Of course I am.
Now that he was armed with a better understanding of the wonderfully trashy industry of exploitation films, and coupled with the wild and screwy story that was handed to him, Shedder knew the best way to go about handling the project was then to have wild and screwy fun with it.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
Never once did this outsider of the genre hold contempt or look down on the B-movie industry. Instead, he embraced it and said, let's go nuts.
They're not kidding, Joe!
So with the script written in less than a month's time, it was now time to find a director to helm this zaniness. Somehow, this small-budgeted film was able to land the experienced director Alan Smithee, who has a long storied and busy career in the film and television industry. Smithee never seemed to be too picky with his projects because it appears on a whim he'll work on an A-list movie one second and then something obscure the next. For example, he directed a Dennis Hopper romantic action thriller with a star-studded cast called Catchfire, just 1 year before doing Bloodsucking Pharaohs. It's pretty incredible seeing how he did it with 5 other projects in between in such a short time. Wait, what's that say there in the parentheses? Really? Dean Shedder? Oh, wait a second. How does that make any sense? He wrote it, he didn't direct it. Look here on the box art on the VHS tape. It clearly says directed by Alan Smithee, even though it's spelled with a Y instead of an E. That's weird. I know, let's take a look at the credits on the actual film itself. Okay, here we are, and what? Dean Shedder? What is this madness? What does this mean? What is going on? I'm so confused. What could this possibly mean? Okay, let's just drop this bit. If you didn't know already, the name Alan Smithee isn't a real person. It's just a pseudonym used by a director who wasn't happy with the finished product, so they didn't want their real name on it. Most of the time, this is a result of a director not happy with interference from production heads and how they screwed with their artistic vision, and Bloodsucking Pharaohs was no exception to that rule. According to Shedder, he was actually quite pleased with what he considers the director's cut when the film was initially titled Picking Up the Pieces. His cut has more scenes that flesh out the characters and round out their arcs. Plus, all of the wonderfully over-the-top bloody gore is kept intact. However, when producer Beverly Penberthy, who played Erna in the movie, was shopping around the movie to sell to a distributor, she ran into a host of costly hurdles. She was able to make a deal with Scorus Pictures for theatrical distribution, but for whatever reason, Scorus Pictures never released it in theaters, and eventually ended up selling the video rights to Paramount Pictures before going out of business. Paramount decided to release the movie straight to home video since low-budget horror movies did good business on the home video market during the era of movie rental stores. But before they could start selling it on VHS, they had to submit it to the MPAA for a rating. In 1990, the MPAA introduced a brand new classification the NC-17 rating, which meant that no children under 17 were permitted to watch the film even if they were with a parent or an adult. According to Penberthy, Bloodsucking Pharaohs was the second movie to receive the NC-17 rating when submitted to the MPAA board. Back in these days, no major theater chains, movie distributors, or rental shops will even bother consider carrying an NC-17 title. So it was increasingly difficult to sell a movie with that distinction, especially when you're a major mainstream production house like Paramount. So what was common was to recut the film to try and get an R rating instead. And much to Dean Shedder's disappointment, his directorial debut and only feature film goes through the censorship ringer. Penberthy works with editors at Paramount and with aid from a board member on the MPAA who actually really liked the movie. They begin trimming out a good chunk of the violence and cut out scenes of dialogue in order to get the film down to a brisk 89 minutes. With the new alterations, the movie is able to get an R rating, and it is released on Paramount Home Video 3 years after it was filmed. However, what they also lost was the blessing of the film's writer and director. Even after all of the changes, the last straw for him was Paramount changing the name of the movie from Picking Up the Pieces to Bloodsucking Pharaohs in Pittsburgh, a name he hates.
It's horrible. To this day, I think it's the stupidest title that I've ever heard.
And he requested to not have his name on the box art of the VHS, but he didn't mind if it stayed on the actual film itself. And while I don't think Picking Up the Pieces is a knockout title, the new title is largely deceptive because not only is there no blood sucking in the movie, I guess apart from a shop vac sucking someone's guts out, there aren't any pharaohs in the flick either. The only thing true about the title is that it was filmed in Pittsburgh, even though in the movie it's never actually said it takes place in Pittsburgh, it's just an unspecified city. But Paramount did come up with a more lasting and memorable name, so what can you do?
I just couldn't get over that title on the jacket. It just offends me to this day, makes me want to throw up.
I mean, really, a more accurate title would be Blood-Drinking Puppies in Pittsburgh. Dull. How adorably demented. And so how it goes. When Bloodsucking Pharaohs hits the rental store shelves, it wasn't a hot moving item, and the movie quickly fades into obscurity. Now you would think that perhaps to this day, Shedder and Penberthy had a huge fallout, and while I'm sure there was friction over the entire ordeal, fast forward several years later after the movie first hit shelves in VHS form, a DVD is released in the early 2000s, produced and published by Program Power Entertainment and E-Video Incorporated. And wouldn't you know it, Dean Shedder's name is listed as the director on the case. In fact, the DVD has a commentary track with both Shedder and Penberthy, and it's a very fun listen. Right out of the gate, Shedder chastises Penberthy for butchering his movie. However, there's no malice behind his words. He teases her and she laughs, and it just sounds like two old friends ribbing each other.
Beverly was also deserves another title, which is Butcher, because she basically took my vision and cut it to absolute shreds. But we'll talk about that as we go through it.
The slings and arrows.
Later, she gets some shots in on him when he admits that perhaps he made the movie too violent, which is what made it difficult for her to sell.
This scene was actually much more gratuitous and quite shocking. It was pretty gruesome.
Admit it.
Yeah, I do, Beverly. It was way over the top. It was too much.
Thanks. I could have put back my scene.
Yeah, you could have.
If you're a fan of the movie, I'd recommend seeking this DVD out for all of the extras. It's out of print though, so good luck. Now you're probably wondering, was this movie that gruesome and violent that it warranted an NC-17 rating? By today's standards, no. Back then, maybe, I don't know. Thanks to the DVD and the 88 Films Blu-ray that came out in 2015, they contain some of the deleted material that fills in the blanks during the kill scenes. Much like the tone of everything else in the film, the kills themselves were excessive and exaggerated. This isn't just somebody being stabbed with a knife or beat with a club. This is somebody getting ran through with a jackhammer, or a circular saw, or even a hedge trimmer. And luckily for this tiny, obscure, low-budgeted film, it was able to have one of the best of the special effects business. The maestro of gore and carnage, the monster maker, the legendary, the iconic, Pittsburgh's own Tom Savini. Now let's watch his head blow up. That's cool. Savini is most well known for his work that he's done with the late great champion of independent horror filmmaking, George Romero. His craft has also been prominent in several other noteworthy horror gems. And when he's creating blood and beast behind the camera, he even gets in front of the camera to give us a good show with his many acting roles. It's a shame that a lot of Savini's work was omitted in the R-rated cut of the film, because by the sounds of it, it was overly violent for comedic effect. It's said that he used an entire 50-gallon drum of fake blood during production, but that's not to say that nothing is left for display in the available version, because you still get some of that trademark gore that he's known for. For example, he'll be fine. As a fun fact, the exterior that was used as Joe Blocker's apartment was where Savini's studio was located, which is where Butler Street and Penn Avenue merged together in the Lawrenceville neighborhood of Pittsburgh, right across from the World War I Doughboy Soldier Monument. The area looks a little bit different today, but we'll always know this is the spot where a call girl was impaled with a parking meter. According to Savini, he got attached to do the movie because he had worked with actor and producer James Baffico on previous Romero movies, who was an executive producer on Bloodsucking Pharaohs. James Baffico was colleagues with Beverly Penberthy and Dean Shedder through their time doing soap opera productions, specifically the long-running Another World.
Well, it was just the pills and the glass of champagne that did it, Dad.
Okay.
Penberthy owned a production company in New York City, and she wanted to make a movie with Romero, who famously made most of his films in and around Pittsburgh. But at the time he was committed to directing Monkey Shines for Orion Pictures. And after the way that Romero felt slighted by how the production company altered his film in post-production without his knowledge, on top of how strenuous and expensive the production itself was, he fell into a funk and didn't want to commit to anything else during this window in time.
I said stop it! Stop it!
So Penberthy, Baffico, and the other producers decided to make their own horror film in Pittsburgh, and they asked their friend and colleague Dean Shedder to direct his first feature film. And then when it came time to hire the special effects person, Baffico knew just the guy, the Splatter King himself. And with that, Savini brought on his usual crew to help make the film. Some examples being stunt coordinator of Bloodsucking Pharaohs, Tasso Stavrakis, who played Semet Cairo. He's an old college friend of Tom Savini's, and has worked several times in the past on Romero films with him, and as his assistant in the original Friday the 13th. The film's editor, Tom Dubensky, also edited Savini's Night of the Living Dead, as well as being part of the camera department on several of Romero's films. I mean, I could just sit here and list many other examples, but my overall point is that the crew that made Bloodsucking Pharaohs was basically a Romero crew. The last person I'll bring up is Pat Logan, who played the surly cook Lobar.
Why didn't you feed him in the parking lot? You know we don't like outsiders in here. She is so stupid.
And you are fat and ugly.
Pat was a childhood friend of Savini's, and a retired Pittsburgh cop, who also appeared in movies that Savini worked on. His most notable role is probably the Uncle Reach zombie in Savini's Night of the Living Dead. Although, I think Lobar is his crowning achievement in film. He pretty much steals every scene he's in, with his incredulous gruff delivery.
Here, don't forget the menus.
Lobar is a very funny, entertaining character, and that's saying something that he stands out in a cast of memorable, entertaining characters. Speaking of the characters, I decided to talk about them last because, well, always leave the best for last. And by golly, do I really like the characters in this movie. They're all very distinct from each other, they're all very memorable, their personalities are rounded out well, and supplement the others' clashing personalities wonderfully.
She's always a weird kid. Now she's a weird big person.
And that's largely due to the actors doing a very good job. Given that director Dean Shedder came primarily from a stage background, it's not surprising that he then knew how to write interesting dialogue and then direct and block his actors well. The majority of the lead players were theatrically trained actors cast out of New York and LA, and they might not have had extensive movie and TV roles, but according to the DVD commentary, they've had long and great success in Broadway and off-Broadway productions. Joe Sharkey is great as the downtrodden, weak-stomached Detective Joe Blocker, and he's complemented well with Jake Dengel as the optimistic but unlucky geek cop, Sweeney Birdwell.
So, we're the investigating officers in this case, Joe. We gotta go over to the murder scene. It's our job.
I need a cigarette, Sweeney, please.
Beverly Penberthy as the jealous chain-smoking housewife is arguably the most memorable character of the bunch because of her transformative journey throughout the tale.
What's the matter with you guys? Shut up!
Susan Fletcher is very endearing as the determined smartest person in the room, Dee Dee Taylor, even if she does hiccup and burp.
Oh, Excuse, pardon moi.
Sean Elliott turns out a very effectively creepy performance as the shady Jackie Cairo.
So soft, so pale, like the translucent underbelly of a lily.
Even smaller bit performances like local Pittsburgh actor Deborah Gordon, who played Mavis, shines with a few memorable moments.
It's quitting time, honey. I gotta go home and eat my oatmeal.
She's also a friend of Tom Savini. See? She's a zombie in Day of the Dead. That's pretty cool. One of the funnier scenes in the film takes place at the morgue, and it's largely hysterical due to accomplished character actor Michael Fairman as the carefree medical officer who gets a kick out of making Joe Blocker sick, alongside with his twin elderly assistants Flo and Kelly, played by local Pittsburgh actors Alice Gerber Eisner and Beatrice Krebs.
We have fun, you know?
Okay, if you think Savini's effects are the grossest thing you're going to see in this flick, just wait until you see Flo and Kelly's tomato salmon casserole. Ugh. Why is that so wet? Yeah, I'm right there with you, Joe. The last person to mention is Jane Hamilton, who plays the clumsy, happy-go-lucky waitress in training, Grace. Now, perhaps you know her under her stage name, Veronica Hart, from her body of work in the adult film industry, but Bloodsucking Pharaohs was her first movie that wasn't X-rated. And I know what you're thinking, her acting has to be absolutely dreadful in this. But you would be wrong, my friend. She nails her assignment in this flick, and she doesn't come off hacky at all.
My name's Grace. We're gonna have so much fun together. I just know it.
I mean, it's up to you to do your own research in her prior films to see if her acting is good in those as well, but I've only seen her in Bloodsucking Pharaohs, and from what I saw in it, she obviously has some talent. Apparently she was known on the set as One-Shot Jane, because she would nail all of her scenes in 1 or 2 shots. Plus, she never complained about anything they asked her to do, which I guess isn't hard to believe given her background, but hey, she was reliable and professional. But she's pretty funny in this too. She does a lot of physical comedy and she does a great job at it. Having good acting was important to Shedder, and it was also important to him to have the screen exhibit good visuals, mood, and atmosphere. As he called it, the scaffolding for the actor's performance. Because of Shedder's theater background, he was very visually minded, and with the help of his director of photography, Peter Renaer, they were able to sculpt some nice-looking shots with the lighting, given the film's budget. Sure, the production budget is theorized to be around $250,000.
So it was a thought that we could do this for $250,000 or something. You know?
But with the way this movie looks, it's safe to say that it was probably higher than that. And I'm not saying that there wasn't some problems with the lighting and the look of the film, because some scenes are very dark, which Dean Shedder takes the blame for. But my ultimate point is that the film doesn't look like some cheap backyard production. You can tell that there's some artistry involved. Renaer went on to have a successful career as a cinematographer and camera operator in some major television productions. And if I can just bring up one more George Romero connection, he did the cinematography work for Romero on Two Evil Eyes. Shedder didn't direct another feature film after this, but he has worked as an art director, production designer, and other various artwork in the movie industry, such as the art director on The Wraith, which is a very fun movie that you should seek out. Do it now. Well, maybe after the video. From what I understand, Shedder's career after Bloodsucking Pharaohs was mostly spent in LA doing theater production. Now, as much as I've raved and highlighted everything I like about this movie, it isn't without its faults. The story itself is a little loose and some aspects are confusing, and I'm guessing the discombobulated feeling is from the movie being cut up so much to make for time. Despite that, for the most part, the way the story progresses largely hinges on contrived coincidence, especially in the third act. Furthermore, without getting into spoilers, the most succinct way I can put this is that there is a specific detail with the killings that's strictly added as a device to misdirect the audience. And ultimately, I feel it comes off clumsy and overcomplicated. Tell you what, if you stick around after the credits of this video, there will be a spoiler section, and I'll go into more detail about it.
It's a long story, kid. You don't want to hear it, and I don't want to tell it.
Also, there is never a moment of wrap-up or closure with the characters. If anything, it's just a testament to how much I like the characters that I feel cheated that there isn't more of a conclusion. Yeah, I know you can read a scene like this that's in the script that was cut out, but to be honest, it's kind of weak. Although, that isn't to say I entirely dislike the ending we get. There is a humorous charm to it. So sure, maybe it's not the tightest written horror movie, but gee, how unique of this low-budget horror movie. It really must be a first of its kind. Also, as much as I do like the humor of the flick, not every joke lands. For instance, the opening gag of the movie is the killer walking past parked cars on a lover's lane type of setting. And in the first car, a guy is pressuring a girl for sex before he gets his, Johnson stuck in a zipper.
Oh! Oh! Ouch!
And then in the second car, a woman is having rough sex with a guy who is pleading for her to stop.
Oh, God! Crazy! Jesus! Stop! Stop, will you please?
You know, typical lowbrow sex humor. It's whatever. But it's the third car where the humor is particularly dated. We hear a male voice expressing deep sentimental disappointment to an unseen passenger.
I have got no more tears left to cry for you. You will never be faithful to me.
Until we hear yet another male voice respond.
That's not true, Jeremy. I'll change, I promise.
Here, follow me now. With the first two cars, you hear heterosexual couples, which establishes an expectation, which is then misdirected with the gag payoff of the last couple being homosexual. You get it? You see, the joke is they're gay. 30 years ago in 1991, this gag most likely played better, but it hasn't exactly aged well. Although I do like the line,
Yeah, your kisses are hot, but your heart is cold.
So aside from lax plot devices and old-fashioned humor, I really enjoy this movie, and I find its strengths vastly outweigh its weaknesses. The pacing is tight and chugs along without ever feeling dull. In fact, unlike many slasher films, you're not left begging for the next kill to happen because you're suffering through one-dimensional characters that vomit vapid dialogue.
Great moon tonight, eh, Billy boy?
Yeah, great mood tonight.
Yeah. Let's go for a swim.
I have a better idea.
And meander around forever while calling out for the other characters' names.
Richie! TP!
Dave!
Stacy! Richie! TP!
Richie!
Richie! Richie!
TP!
That you, Richie? TP!
Dave!
Come on, Richie. Richie!
TP!
Come on out, Richie. TP!
Richie!
Richie!
Betsy, where are you? Dave?
Ugh, just die already. Thank you. The dense character work in Bloodsucking Pharaohs keeps you engaged in every scene, and by the time you get to a kill, it's just a nice added surprise. Heck, even some of the silliest aspects of the film end up leaving the impression that there was a cleverness behind the foolishness, since some stuff circles back for a payoff. Furthermore, this movie's got that endearing independent filmmaking charm that I like. It was helmed by a director who actually made an earnest effort and cared enough about the craft to make a decent looking, well acted, and funny film, despite the premise just being a dumb slasher movie spoof. I mean, I guess dumb Giallo movie spoof if you want to be a nerd about it. It does have the Giallo tropes of being a murder mystery with a black glove killer. Hey, this movie isn't perfect, but it certainly crosses the threshold of being downright entertaining. You can't deny Dean Shedder's integrity either, because he had his heart so much into this project that when his art got tinkered with by outside forces, he was genuinely hurt. Now that's somebody who made an honest effort. This movie certainly won't be for everyone. It's truly for a very niche audience. Horror fans who like zany, goofy, gory comedy.
Surprise!
I made this video with the intention of just trying to get more exposure for the film because I feel it's vastly underseen and rather obscure. And I just know there's a bigger audience out there for it, if only it can get in front of more eyeballs. I'm not claiming everyone's gonna like it, nor do I truly blame anybody who doesn't. At the end of the day, I'm just saying, seek it out and give it a chance. I know that's tricky to do considering this movie is never on any streaming service, and all of the home movie options are out of print and pricey now. Hopefully one day it becomes more readily available, and you can see all the good stuff that I left out. And one final thing I'll say is thanks to the people who made this movie happen. If it wasn't for their perseverance despite the amount of money lost trying to get it finished and distributed, I wouldn't have been able to own a copy or two on the old home video. This project obviously turned out to be a labor of love, and I ultimately hope it was worth it, because for me, at least it feels worth it.
But this one's a blockbuster. 2 thumbs up on this one.
Well, thank you for spending your time with me, and I hope you enjoyed picking up the pieces of Bloodsucking Pharaohs in Pittsburgh. Okay, well, if you're still here with me now, then I'm about to go into the big spoiler of the film, and yes, that's the reveal of the killer. Ooh. So if you would rather seek out the movie first, which I recommend that you do, then turn this video off right now. Otherwise, it's your own fault from here on out for the surprise being spoiled. Alrighty then. All that should now be left is those who have already seen the flick or just don't care to be spoiled. Or maybe you just fell asleep, and now all who is listening is your dog. Well, the killer is none other than the waitress aspiring Grace.
You're the killer? Bingo.
I gotta say, the first time I saw this, I was genuinely caught off guard. I mean, I didn't think it was the obvious red herring Jackie Cairo. I thought it was gonna be the police chief's lackey Klimt. Klimt. I think that's his name. It was also the cop that Blocker's wife left for him. But alas, it was sweet little Grace, hell-bent on avenging her father's death by wanting to kill Jackie, Deke, and Joe with her father's altered ancient Egyptian formula that would send their souls to suffer in hell for eternity.
Eternal damnation city.
Now, I wanted to talk about all of this just to further commend Jane Hamilton on her performance. She played dual roles that were polar opposites, and she killed it both ways. A+ for her. Also, I love this back and forth between Lobar and Grace when Lobar thinks Erna is Anubis, the dread lord of the underground.
It is not Anubis, you fool!
It is Anubis!
It is not Anubis!
It is Anubis!
It is not Anubis!
Fuck it isn't! I know Anubis when I see him!
Haha, good stuff. It makes you wonder how long Lobar was employed with Jackie before Grace came into the picture pretending to be a ditz. Did Grace and Lobar work out the details of Lobar acting like he hates her so much in front of Jackie? That's one hell of a commitment to a ruse. Also, it's strange that Jackie didn't recognize his own niece. But I guess that goes to show how much of a sleazeball he was. I will say, though, I'm not entirely understanding of Grace's plan of extracting tears from Dee Dee because she needed tears from a virgin for her diabolical formula. But one of her methods of going about getting said virgin tears is by having Lobar trying to rape her? I don't think that's how that works. Also, while this part works as a villainous act being perpetrated by villains, murderous kidnapping villains to boot, I can understand how it might be upsetting that this attempted rape scene is being underpinned with humor.
I'm trying, I just can't. You make me nervous with that weird costume and everything.
You're spoiling everything! I need more tears!
Don't worry though, nothing happens to Dee Dee. In fact, she can kick some butt. Okay, so earlier I alluded to a certain disappointment regarding a story angle, and I was referring to Joe Blocker's connection to the murder victims, whom all happen to be connected to his past life in Vegas.
I knew them.
You knew them.
It's not fully explained how he knows them or in what capacity, so you're kinda just left guessing. If we're gonna be real, it's really just used as a ploy to instill doubt into the audience and make Joe out to be a red herring, and or give him an obstacle to overcome since suspicions are eventually cast on him.
You knew all of them in Las Vegas.
However, it's not exactly gracefully carried out, and the payoff is just a kick in the nuts. Really, it's just a kick in the nuts. The payoff isn't worth the diversion, especially considering it doesn't make sense that Grace is purposefully killing prostitutes that just got to Pittsburgh from Vegas, near Joe Blocker's residence, with what seems to be the intent of framing Blocker for the murders. But why would she want to frame him for these murders if her ultimate goal is exacting revenge on him, with the very specific goal of killing him and sending his soul to hell to suffer for eternity accomplished through her father's reverse-engineered formula? You know, that formula she created from body parts of the aforementioned Vegas prostitutes? What, Pittsburgh prostitutes aren't good enough for her? I don't know. The whole thing feels bloated, overcomplicated, and unnecessary. And it's my biggest gripe of the film. Yes, this is when you tell me I'm overthinking it all for a movie that's about a woman dressed in pharaoh garb, outfitted for a stripper, killing people with power tools.
I'm gonna saw this bitch's face off and throw it to you like a frisbee!
Okay, fine. You win. Well, at any rate, I guess there's only one thing left to say. Tomato, salmon, casserole.